Hey, it's Sim. Hope you enjoyed the new intro and the new color scheme. I have quite a few things that I want to talk about this week, so let's get into it. I was talking to a younger colleague of mine the other day, and the topic came up that they were kind of disappointed in, I think, the ending of Wuthering Heights. I think they said that they watched it and they felt like the ending for it, which I believe is like they both die in the end, tragically, like Romeo and Juliet. They felt like they were really disappointed that they chose to do an ending that wasn't happy. That where everybody didn't just get along and survive all the way throughout the end, that they chose to have a story element that was sad. I found that really interesting because I feel like that's a lot of people these days. I feel like that's a lot of potentially younger people these days, where we are more seeking endings to stories that have the flattest neutrality out there in terms of happiness or sadness. I think that sad endings these days are a little taboo. I feel like people don't want that story to make them feel upset, which I suppose is valid in some ways, but there's a lot of value in a sad ending. Let's take Romeo and Juliet, for example. You know, Romeo and Juliet, it is a tragedy. It is something that was manufactured to make you feel upset at the end, to make you see something beyond what you were feeling. You were wanting them, desiring them to go forward in the world together, but in the end, Romeo kills himself because he thinks Juliet died. Juliet only made herself go to sleep, but didn't expect Romeo to kill himself, and kills herself in the end afterwards. There's no happiness there. But the lesson there being the story around that situation that happened. I feel like in this situation, my young colleague was very focused on what was happening between the two individuals on screen, the two main characters. But it was really the situation around those two characters that was the real story that was being told. There's a lot of value in feeling that kind of betrayal, that kind of tragedy that strikes in a story, because it shows you a different feeling than you're used to. It gets you out of your comfort zone. It makes you think about what's going on. Because if those characters, those main characters in that story are removed, then it makes you have to think, what is the reality that's going on here? I think that's in part why tragedies are so profound, because they make you think, and they force you to look around. I think in regard to the human experience too, nobody obviously wants a tragedy, but I feel like people should expect a tragedy more often. People should be expecting a middling outcome rather than a high one. Now, obviously, stories that are told to younger people, especially children, they're always, most of the time, manufactured to have a happy ending. They all lived happily ever after. But reality doesn't really work like that. Stories don't really just end between people. They keep going until they die. And so that is actually a true ending where people die in the end. So Romeo and Juliet is kind of training us to think differently about how stories should really work. A happy ending doesn't really just end with people getting married and having a light little kiss. Happy endings don't really just end when the hero saves the day. the story keeps going. Happiness is only a lovely little happenstance as a result of that story. Tragedies are necessary. Tragedies are fundamental to living. People live tragic lives. Things happen that make us feel sad and make us reflect internally. It is that internal reflection that gives us growth, that gives us, purpose, that lets us move forward. So, my point here is that I hope for people not to primarily focus on the happy ending. Don't be disappointed when an ending isn't happy. Open your eyes. Look around. It can reflect a lot of yourself internally. Why was I expecting this way? What more do I want out of this story? And why am I left longing? Why am I left yearning for something else? Ask yourself these questions. I feel like tragedies are especially important today because we don't get enough of them in common media. I think they provide something that we're not used to, but that we should have a little taste of in our lives to give us those opportunities for growth. When I say JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, what do you think of? Do you think of a particular type of person that watches that show? Does it kind of bring to mind a lot of stereotypes about otaku and anime enjoyers in general? I feel like a lot of people that do watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure are regarded as eccentric, I guess. I think JoJo's, personally, I really, really like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I really, really enjoy it. I think that among anime, it is one of the best. What is unfortunate, I feel, is that JoJo is always consistently referred to as and regarded as really good anime and really good manga on that front too. And I feel like that regard really weighs down its perception of value for a lot of people. I feel like people regard JoJo in the same way that they regard like Dragon Ball Z, right? It's like one of those very cliche anime archetypes. It is one of those very successful anime that has gotten into such a conversation in the public diaspora that people start seeing it as dismissible in some regard. I find that so unfortunate. I really do. I love JoJo primarily because of the ideas that it really brings up and bring to play in its anime run. I feel like JoJo is one of those anime that's just really not afraid to go and push boundaries. I'm really a fan of those that really just don't play nice. They take a story and they run with it, and then they inject the most batshit insane, just crazy stuff into it because they feel like they can, but things that honestly progress the story forward in unexpected ways. I don't think that any new anime watcher or a person new to JoJo who hasn't seen it can possibly predict episode to episode what they feel like is going to happen with it. And I feel like that's really uncommon with a lot of anime. So, personally, I supremely enjoy JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. There was a time, I guess 2 summers ago, where I had never seen it up to that point until 2 years ago. And I disregarded the hype and I stereotyped, people who really advocated for JoJo. I was like, yeah, it's probably one of those anime that's just for that kind of person. And I decided though that I wanted to take the plunge. I wanted to see what it's all about. And honestly, I feel like it lives up to the hype a lot. It's surprising that it does because I feel like a lot of those overhyped, anime, manga, or shows even, really don't live up to that hype. But JoJo actually does. And I wanted to just kind of say that it's unfortunate that that is the case. It's really unfortunate that JoJo and shows like JoJo are so hype because we live in such an overhyped culture that level of hype really gets boiled down. when people are actually talking about it. People just assume that it's overhyped, and then the value of it gets boiled down as well. People start disregarding a lot of the things about it, or perhaps a lot of the praises that it receives, because they feel like it's overhyped, just like everything else. I feel like that's really unfortunate. And I really do feel that JoJo does offer some of the most fresh anime in all of its runs, all of its different seasons. I'm so excited for Steel Ball Run when it comes out here in a little bit. I personally think that either Golden Wind or the one with Josuke are both of the best ones, I think. For me. Obviously, that's like probably up to contention. But I think that some of the story elements and some of the villains that JoJo brings forward in its runs are some of the most memorable in anime history. And I feel like they're some of the most unique in anime history as well. I am also just such a huge appreciator of how many unique concepts they bring to the table with every new iteration of JoJo. I am just floored by how many unique ideas are really, really brought. And I feel like it sets a standard that has yet been quite unachievable by most anime today. So, I don't know. Obviously this has just been a JoJo appreciation vlog, but at the same time, I feel like it's always worth a try to see what things are all about. Give them a try, and then if you really don't like it, then that's fine, obviously. But I don't know. I just kind of lament that things that are definitely worth the hype are disregarded in some ways and kind of fall into that sea of, you know? So, I don't know. If you've watched JoJo and kind of feel the same way, let me know. If you haven't watched JoJo, let me know some of those like different stereotypes that you have of people who do enjoy JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Because those people definitely are bizarre. And it does take maybe a special kind of person to enjoy them, but I don't know. I really enjoy them. I really enjoyed Stone Ocean. Now that I've finally seen it, I think Jolene is an excellent character, and I thought that the run of the show was fantastic, and I'm really excited for Steel Ball Run. Let me know what you thought. I've been seeing more and more different articles being brought up about the White House Twitter account and how it has been more or less blatantly gamifying war with Nintendo references of all things. The White House Twitter account has been using, you know, Nintendo Pokopia and the Pokopia trending font to gamify war, to promote itself. It's been using Wii Sports more recently clips to show airstrikes happening in Iran. Like, I didn't really feel like I would be alive to see that day come, you know, when America itself propagandizes its own war machine. I just find that incredible. I am truly and honestly disgusted by all of it. It really kind of boils my blood in a lot of different ways, but I just don't like it. I really don't like it and not just as, I lean more liberally, but this isn't really something that's just about anti-MAGA, right? I feel like when you are in such a higher level position, that the sanctity of that position, the sanctity of that status should be respected in some ways. I feel like it really sets such a poor precedent, such a bad precedent, when that high-ranking status-seated position is now just being used for clicks, for just that propagandizing machine, but in such a blatant regard that Twitter account, I feel like, used to be used just for official updates, or just like maybe something witty or pithy of a moment, right? Sharing out some things that maybe mattered or were in some ways culturally significant to the nation. But instead, now we are integrating gaming footage with war footage. Something that I feel like would typically only be found on like 4chan, you know? Like, we are combining Call of Duty kill streak footage with actual footage of airstrikes and potentially people being killed in Iran. I just feel like that's just crazy. Some of you might feel differently, obviously, and some of you do feel differently. Some of you feel like, yeah, that's like some cool shit, man. Fuck yeah. I just don't feel that way, and I don't share that. I feel like if you're in that kind of position, and I do like the United States. I've been an American citizen my whole life, you know? Like, I feel like there's always a little bit of this nation that you like and don't want to see go downhill like this. It's old-fashioned of me, for sure. It's old-fashioned of me to want the station of the presidency to remain respectful, to remain politically sanctified. But apparently that's not the time for it. And I guess my views are quite outdated nowadays. It's unfortunate. And I feel like, I guess, a lot of older people, older than me, have felt this way in the past about how the United States has participated in a lot of things. So, I don't know. I'm curious what other people think, but at the same time, I feel like a position of such station should be respected by not just the people approaching that station, but also the people who are in the station themselves. I don't know. It is a bad look, in my opinion, to be doing such things in such a public forum and enforcing that war is just a game. I feel like that's not safe. And I feel like that is a really poor and sad precedent to set. So what would happen if the world suddenly became a hive mind? If every individual on the planet suddenly coalesced into one being with multiple bodies still, and was solely interested in peace, prosperity, and the safety of the planet's residents? That's the question that Pluribus poses to its viewers. And I've been watching it this past week. So Pluribus is on Apple TV Plus, or I guess they just call it Apple TV now. It's honestly really, really great. The concept of it was completely original. I had originally thought that it was a concept from a book, like they all are, really. But no, this one was an original concept for TV, and I am sure that somebody's written a book on it before. The concept of being within a hive mind, participating in that way, on like a different planet or something like that. I know that there was a Love, Death, Robots episode that kind of breached that topic as well. There was like an encounter with a hive mind culture or something like that. I think they were insects, so it's usually like bugs that they make the hive mind concept into. However, in Pluribus, they kind of flip it on its head and make the hive mind people, the entire population of the world. In Pluribus, they, and I'm not trying to spoil anything, nothing's really spoiled here. In Pluribus, there are only a few survivors in the world after this joining, so they call it. And the story revolves around one such survivor who is able to retain their consciousness and communicate with the rest of the hive mind. What is interesting about this concept, and what I've been thinking about constantly since starting to watch Pluribus, is what do I feel like I would do in that situation? Apparently, through the logic of the show, the hive mind only seeks to benefit those that aren't a part of the hive mind. They want to keep them safe, and they want to do whatever they can to please them, to make them happy. That's such an interesting concept, and one that I just find myself thinking on often now as a result. What would I do if the entire knowledge base of the rest of the world was available to me? And what would I do if everybody in the world were responding to my beck and call? I mean, that's kind of a crazy concept to think. And in the show, they touch on a lot of different perspectives on that front. But what I feel like I'm most interested in is all the questions that I feel like I would want to ask. Obviously, there's a lot of world that we live in, and there's a lot of secrets in the world that we live in, and there's a lot of just knowledge that is never shared in the world that we live in. And I'm really curious about it. I'm always curious about trying to gather as much knowledge as I can. As a kid, I grew up, and I tell people this, but I grew up and my favorite books to read were like the world encyclopedias. Yeah. But so I'm always really curious about like most things in the world, and having that as a concept, having just like access to all the knowledge in the world at one time, that would be awesome. I feel like there are so many questions that I would personally want to ask. So many different theories that I'd like to broach, like, do we have resolutions for, scientifically for trying to live forever? Do we know of any existences outside of our own scientifically? You know what I'm saying? Are there any, of those deeper, darker secrets that have just been kind of pushed down? Who were all the people on the Epstein file? No, I'm just kidding. But maybe I'd ask that. I don't know. But it wouldn't matter at that point because the rest of the world would be moot at that point. The whole purpose of the concept is that the rest of the world is peaceful. They all only work towards a unified goal. And now I haven't finished Pluribus, so Lord knows if it turns out poorly. But I'm just talking on the concept for right now. If everybody is working in unison toward a singular goal of survival, then you would think that there's just peace. There's enough food for everyone. There is enough resources for every single individual in the world. And everybody is constantly doing something, but selfishness is off the table. So I just find that concept really, really interesting. And there are so many questions that I feel like I personally would want to ask, but what I'm really curious about is what are questions that you guys would ask? What are the things that really like kind of keep you up that you really, really want to know? I feel like people don't get the opportunity to let out those kinds of questions that they have. They kind of just keep them close to themselves for the sake of not feeling conspiratorial, I guess. And not looking like a weirdo, like everybody has questions about things, and I feel like people need a forum to be able to say them. So I don't know, the internet's anonymous enough. So if you have any of those questions that you feel like you'd ask in that situation, that you would ask the global knowledge for the answer for, what would those questions be? I'm really curious. Let me know. Have you ever been communicating a topic and you kind of find yourself flubbing? You're trying to explain something to someone, but it's not coming off in the way that you hoped or expected it to or envisioned it in your mind. You're floundering, some might say. You're trying to say something and it's at the tip of your tongue, but you just can't formulate the topic that you're trying to convey. There are hierarchies of information, right? There is levels of importance that you need to mention in an order that makes sense, in a descending order. For any topic, you'll always want to lead with what's most important, right? The what. What am I talking about? I am talking about ideas and how to talk about them. Then the why. Some people aren't able to communicate those topics very well, and they need assistance from a top-down stage perspective in order to make sense of what they're speaking on. How? Well, you have multiple stages for topics, and you give those topics an order of importance. Now, obviously, I just reiterated the thing that I already said, but try this with anything that you're trying to talk about. The what, the why, and the how, in that order. The what is always the most important because it gives people background. It sets the scene for what you are going to talk about, right? Hey, I just bought a new boat this weekend. Okay, that's what we're talking about. What I want to talk about, though, is in the how, right? The process, that story, right? But I'm not going to get there yet. Why did I buy a new boat? Well, I've been thinking about it lately, and I really have been wanting to get out on the weekends and get on the water, you know? This is such an old person thing to talk about, I guess. It's just what came to mind for me right now, so bear with me. So there's the what, right? It gives further background, it gives further juice to the story, the why, right? Gives the listener a perspective of, okay, so this is like the importance factor of like why we're talking about this, right? And why I should care. It invests you in what is being talked about. And then the how, you can get to finally the little nitty gritties of that story about what happened there. Well, you know, I went to the person to go buy it, and goddamn, I left my wallet at home. So I wasn't able to actually get the boat, but I was able to schedule another time to talk to him in a week or so. Now, what's interesting about that story I just kind of made up is that I didn't talk about anything. Nothing of importance at all. But it sounded like I did, right? It sounded like it had meat. It sounded like it was something worth talking about. Isn't that interesting? So there's hierarchies of how to present information to people and sound like you're talking about something interesting when you're really not. And it's a skill. It's a skill to practice. Practicing in how to present information to other people. That's how people give speeches. That's how people convince other people of things. They present them information in a way that is interesting to the brain. So try it out when you're talking to other people in the future. Give it a go. Show people your skills in presenting information, and people are going to listen to you a lot more often. Give it a go. Have you ever been in a situation where, you know, you're just kind of living life and a lot of time passes by without you having known it? You know, you feel like it was just January, but now it's almost the end of March. I feel like that quite often from time to time, and time is such a magical thing about living. It dilates so easily based on your perception of it. If you're paying attention to it, it goes quite slow. It feels like time isn't really passing at all. But then if you're busying yourself with stuff, time passes by so quickly. Or vice versa. Some people, if they're doing stuff, time passes slower. And others, if they're not doing anything, time passes by really fast. I feel like the perception of time is such a shared human experience. It is a hallmark of us as people. We are truly experiencing the world and its wonders at different paces. People feel that time is malleable. People feel that time is really up for grabs and we're always running out of it. It's a resource. But the real resource is us and how we are actually injecting ourselves into that time frame, into time as it moves forward. Time dilation, I feel like it's so prevalent. We really feel like we're losing so much time all the time. And by the time that we realize it, so much time has passed. It's quite a conundrum. I think the next time that you are feeling that way, share it with somebody. Ask them what their perception of time has been, and if it's causing you a lot of issues, if you feel like time's moving too quickly or not fast enough, tell someone and bond with them about it. Because I feel like time, it is such a shared thing and a shared resource that a lot of people don't really consider everybody else is kind of feeling the same way. So maybe next time you're feeling that way, next time you're feeling like time is running a bit too fast, tell someone about it. Tell the next person you see, or just a friend. Obviously, you don't want to talk to any strangers, but tell someone about it and see how they've been perceiving time as of late. Maybe it's something that you guys can bond on. Maybe it's something that might matter more if more people are thinking about it together, and maybe you'll find a solution to it. Time is one of the most finite and infinite resources that we have on Earth. It's a conundrum. It's opposite. There's a lot of those. Try to find them and try to see how you can compare it against those with everybody else. If you're a fan of Star Wars, you've kind of heard the saying that only Sith deal in absolutes. But what does that actually mean, right? Well, an absolute is something that is a strict cut, right? It is a absolutely this is that, or absolutely this always results in that. That is a very dangerous way to look at things. And I personally believe that absolutes shouldn't really exist for people. People should not think in absolutes. Absolutes lead to bad consequences, in my opinion. There are a lot of absolutes that exist in the world, right? There are absolutes based on race. There are absolutes based on the economy. There's absolutes based on every single possibly thing you can imagine. And I feel like they're all unhealthy to lean on, especially the ones that you believe in deeply. Absolutely all men are bad. Absolutely all women are bad. Absolutely all XYZ are bad. Or all they do is hurt you, or all they do is try to use you, or this, that, and the other. It's all not well informed. And it's all condemning a certain group or a certain idea to negativity. If you are thinking in an absolute about something else, you are effectively condemning every of that side to an opinion, which means that you are limiting yourself to potentially good outcomes from that absolute. Let's go back to absolutely all men are bad. A lot of men are bad, but likely not all of them statistically, right? You would hope. But do you see where I'm getting at? It's not that all men are bad. Men have a likelihood of being bad. So reframe it in that way, so that you're not limiting yourself to possibilities that exist. Absolutely, all spicy food is too spicy for me. Most spicy food is too spicy for me. I actually really like spicy food. This is for my mom. But you get what I'm saying? Like, you can try a non-absolute item from your absolute. Absolutes should not be the end all for you to have an opinion about something. You know, absolutely all liberals think the same way. Absolutely all MAGA thinks the same way. You know, like, it's limiting. It's limiting you to possibility. It's limiting you to experiences. It's limiting you to reality at large. Everything in the world, there is nothing that is a true absolute. Absolutely nothing. Except you will absolutely die if you try not to breathe oxygen. Right? So think about that. Think about the absolutes in your life and what you are actually limiting yourself to by thinking that way. Give it some thought. I finally watched Shogun, the drama on FX. It's streaming on Hulu that takes place in 1600s Japan. And man, what a show. It is more than what I expected it to be, honestly. I mostly expected it to be something that kind of draws a lot of similarity to, you know, The Last Samurai, right? Something where Tom Cruise comes in, white savior, comes and, you know, goes to Japan and becomes like the best guy ever, you know, and everybody loves him or something. But I was actually really surprised that it didn't turn out that way. Shogun is, obviously, it's about a family or multiple dynasties of Japanese people who are in a power dispute over most of Japan. There is like a white savior type, one white guy that comes in and, you know, and I mean, he's not white, I mean, he is British, but he speaks Portuguese anyway. But white guy comes in and, you know, he's one of the primary characters as he's trying to navigate that era of Japan. But what it's primarily about is women in Japan. What a novel concept, right? It is primarily looking to broach the topic and expose how women were treated in that era in Japan and how closely they're actually treated the same today. One of the characters of the show, Mariko, she is a woman of power in Japan, but she is treated so poorly throughout the entirety of the show. But I mean, she is a noble woman in Japan. But what it aims to do is, one, it tells a very good story. It tells a really good story just about the power struggles in Japan and the cultural shifts between nations, you know, what was actually going on in that period between Japan, Great Britain, and I guess Portugal and Spain. And it really, really shows, you know, just the kind of obscene treatment of women in Japan in that period. Back then and even now, women in Japan are just fully treated as less than men in Japan. And this is the same, I mean, in most countries right now. But in Japan and by extension Korea and China, it's really not good. It is to a high extreme in these places of the world. And Japan is, I mean, pretty harsh on it. A lot of the culture of Japan revolves around a woman serving their husband or serving men. And it's really put outright in the show just how mistreated women were in that era. It's not enraging by any means, but it is eye-opening. I really encourage people to watch it because it just kind of shows the history and the background of that kind of thing in Japan. And it's funny to juxtapose it against what is going on in Japan right now. You know, women, for all intents and purposes, really don't like guys right now. And men in Japan and in Korea are just awful people right now. Men are obviously just incredibly misogynistic most of the time in most countries. But in Japan and Korea, I think it's really escalated. Men do not treat women like equals, and women, by an extension, do not trust men in any way whatsoever. What Shogun does, though, is it shows that dichotomy between men and women in the vein of culture and tradition. It shows that women really did their best to believe that, you know, their sole purpose was to serve their man. And it shows there's a kind of heavy tragedy there, in that women are just trapped into that box in that society. And throughout the show, this Mariko character is really shoved through a lot of just terrible situations that could have been avoided entirely if the culture were different surrounding women and men of the era. I felt like the show did a really great job at broaching that topic. I feel like the show did a really great job of showing that tragedy, the reality that women in Japan were treated in that way, and that same culture is brought into modern day Japan. There are a lot of traditions in Japanese culture, and those traditions were shaped and formed by men in history, the men in power, right? And that's one of the sayings that, just in general, that the people in history are the ones, the people of power are the ones that write history. And in Japan, that's very, very true. Men transformed how women would be treated throughout the entire history of Japan, and it's the case with a lot of Asian countries. And it's just incredibly sad to see, but it is a reality nonetheless, and I think that Shogun really breaches that topic very well. I think that Shogun is well worth the view, and if you ever get a chance, definitely take a watch and try it out. Let me know what you thought about it. I really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, it's on Hulu through FX. Let me know your thoughts. One of my younger colleagues came to me one day and was asking how I focus on things, how I can focus on a task and make sure it gets done. Now, everybody focuses differently. Everybody needs different ways to accomplish the tasks that they have in front of them. For me, I am able to focus really easily on things. I can just kind of lock in for a little bit, and if there's a task in front of me, I will complete it with or without my interest. Now, if the more interested I am in a project, the faster I'll complete it. That's a different thing, the speed at which I can complete a project. But the focus level for me is quite direct. If I am working on a project, then I am focused on it. That's not the same for everybody else. So there needs to be a lot of different tools and techniques to be able to accomplish projects. I know that there's probably a lot of you that, aren't able to focus very well. My wife's one of them. I have a lot of friends who can't focus very well and need different things to be able to focus better. So one of those things that I suggested to my younger colleague was the Pomodoro method. I'm wondering if anybody else has heard of it. It was a really popular method, I guess in the 80s, and it had its resurgence in the mid-2000s. And I think it's still popular today, but I think it might be flying under the radar in terms of ways people do try to focus. So the Pomodoro focus method is taking your task and breaking it up into smaller segments of focus periods. So giving yourself a set amount of time. I think usually it's like 15 minutes where you are dead focusing on a task for just 15 minutes. And then after that, you take a break, like an intended break from the thing that you're focusing on, and just step away from it. Then after that break of like 5, maybe 10 minutes or something like that, you go back into it for another 15, and then you're on and off, on and off. That's the Pomodoro method. Now, Pomodoro is, I think, tomato in Spanish, or Portuguese, and it is based on those little tomato timers that you might see in like a kitchen or something like that. That's why it's called the Pomodoro method. And it's effective. It's been effective for a lot of different people, and for my younger colleague, it was effective when he tried it out. So I don't know, if you're ever feeling like you might need a little bit of a change up in terms of how you focus on a project, try the Pomodoro method. Try 15 minutes of focus and then maybe 5 minutes off, and then keep cycling through. It gives you an opportunity to rest your brain a little bit between sessions, to give you a little bit of a breath between heavy focus periods. And I think for a lot of people, you'll find that you have more drive, motivation, and energy to potentially finish that project that you've been trying to get going on or work on, but don't really feel like locking in too hard. Give it a try. Let me know if you do give it a try. And let me know what you think. It's always been effective for a lot of different people. You know, there are a lot of different ways to get information these days, right? Obviously, there's a constant flow of information everywhere, from emails to text messages to advertisements on billboards to advertisements before YouTube videos, everything. There are so many ways to get information that it is hard to understand that there is a right place to get information from. Information is just kind of served to you. It's given to you on a silver platter, and it's kind of hard to just think about that information economically, right? It's hard to think, okay, is this information that I'm being given accurate? Is it good information? Is it bad information? Diversity of information is where you make more informed decisions about what you're doing. If you are only getting information, like let's say from your mom, are you always going to turn out okay just based on that information? Wouldn't you rather get maybe a second opinion from your dad? Wouldn't you maybe want to get a second opinion from your friend to diversify those opinions that are available to you, right? Every stream of information that you get, it can be an advertisement, it can be a reel, it can be a YouTube video. Everything is an opinion, and everything should be treated as an opinion. It should be treated not as fact, but as what it is. People are serving you that information, right? About a week ago, a young colleague of mine, they were looking to buy something online, and they said that they looked at what the best version of that thing was, and that's how they were making their decision. And I said, okay, where did you look to get that information? They are buying a computer something, and the only place they looked was Best Buy, the app. And that's it. That's the only place they looked, because that's what said to them, these are the best of the year. Now, that's problematic, right? Because Best Buy isn't the only source where that information exists. And Best Buy's opinion is they're going to give you the information of their vendors that they want to sell the most, right? So whether or not those things are good or bad compared against everything else available in the world doesn't matter to somebody like Best Buy. So therein comes the value of looking around, looking to find what better information is out there for you to find, to get, to inform you of a better decision. It's relevant for a lot of things. Primarily, it's relevant for when you're buying things out in the world. So the next time you are going to go and make some kind of purchase, make sure you're doing some research. Make sure you're getting information from a lot of different places, not just one, not just one. People want to get information from just one place, and that is not safe. It's not safe to do it that way. It's not in your best interest to do it that way. Try your best to get your information from a lot of different sources, from a lot of different places before you actually go out and make a decision on those things. It'll really benefit you for whatever you're trying to do. And that's all I have for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to, just talk about the things I've been thinking about this week and from the past weeks. I know this one was kind of a heftier one, I guess, full of a lot of different philosophical topics, I suppose. But I, again, just really appreciate, the opportunity to talk, the opportunity to let my thoughts out. So I hope that everyone enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, leave a subscribe. And honestly, leave a comment about other topics that I can talk about. I'm always looking for interaction with people out there. I'd love to just be able to talk about things that people want to talk about. It's raining right now, so I'm going to be starting to head back, but I really appreciate it once again. I hope that you have a great week ahead. I hope that everything goes your way. And just remember to keep your head up and keep going. It's worth it. So I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.